So one of the best way to improve our writing is to make sure that our writing is more flexible. We tend to write in the same sentence structures over and over. These are patterns that are familiar to us and they're comfortable, but because effective writing requires a lot more flexibility than that, it's good to practice some sentence structures that are a little bit out of our comfort zone. I think one of the best ways to do that is to mimic somebody else's sentence. So what you do in an exercise like this is you take another sentence, one that has a structure that's above and beyond the kind of structures that you usually use. Then you spend some time looking at the sentence as if you're trying to figure out how it's put together. I'm not so concerned with like a part by speech, word by word dissection, but just in general you want to look at the sentence and get a sense of how the sentence works, what the clauses are and how the clauses are put together. After you get a sense of how the sentence works, you then go back and you replace the clauses with very similar clauses grammatically that have different words. And so what you're doing is you're setting up a sentence of your own that mimics the structure and the pattern of the sentence that you're copying. In the end, you'll have a sentence that's brand new. It came from you and it's about your subject, but it uses the structure of your source sentence. Okay, and so what we're going to do is I'm going to go through one of these now, and then after I go through it, you're going to have some chances to go through one together. And your homework tonight is to do something similar. Okay, I've emailed you a list of some source sentences, and you're going to have to take two of those source sentences and turn them into mimics. So if this is something that you're not understanding, you need to make sure that you're asking questions. Okay, let's look at a sentence. Everywhere he goes, the questions seem the same, as if he has some special vision into the future of new heroes. And everywhere he goes too, older men grab his hand and feel his arm and predict that he could still go out there and hit one. And the smile on DiMaggio's face is genuine. Okay, so let's look at that sentence a little bit closer. We basically have three independent clauses. The first one is, everywhere he goes, the questions seem the same, as if he has some special vision into the future of new heroes. We have a second independent clause with, and everywhere he goes too, older men grab his hand and feel his arm and predict that he could still go out there and hit one. And then we have a third independent clause, and the smile on DiMaggio's face is genuine. Not only do we have these three independent clauses, but the first two independent clauses start with the same word, everywhere he goes. And so we have this parallel structure, everywhere he goes. And since it's a rather long independent clause, when we have the second and everywhere he goes too, we find ourselves made aware that we're starting over of sorts with a new part of the sentence. So we have this adverb clause, everywhere he goes, which explains when the questions seem the same. And then we have a second adverb clause, everywhere he goes, which explains where the older men grab his hand. The final independent clause is short. The smile on DiMaggio's face is genuine. And it makes sense at the end to have a short independent clause to kind of tie up the sentence. A sentence like this is very dangerous in the sense that it can get out of control. And so you need to make sure that you're constructing it in a way that's kind to the reader. And progressively shorter clauses make it easier for the reader to have faith that eventually you're going to finish the sentence. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to take the first independent clause, everywhere he goes, the questions seem the same, and we're going to change that so that we're using the same types of sentences. So everywhere he goes, the questions seem the same, become everywhere I looked, the sights suggested defeat. Now I started with everywhere, and then instead of he goes, which is a pronoun and then a verb, I have I looked, which is also a pronoun and a verb. The questions becomes the sights, and seems the same becomes suggested defeat. Now that's not exactly the same. I don't have an article like the before same. I just have suggested defeat, but it's close enough. Okay, so everywhere he goes, the questions seem the same became everywhere I looked, the sights suggested defeat. Now I'm going to go on. Everywhere he goes, the questions seem the same, as if he has some special vision into the future of new heroes. I'm going to make that, everywhere I looked, the sights suggested defeat, as if I had entered into a new reality of inescapable chaos. Okay, so let's look at that new clause. As if stays the same, he has becomes I had, entered into a new reality is the same as has some special vision of inescapable chaos into the future of new heroes. Now that one's probably the weakest mimic in my new sentence, but it still has the general role as further explaining the previous clause. Okay? Now to finish it off, my new sentence is, everywhere I looked, the sight suggested defeat, as if I had entered into a new reality of inescapable chaos. And everywhere I walked, too, discarded toys blocked my path and bit into my feet and reminded me of the noise that recently rang through the house. And the sinking feeling in my heart was devastating. Okay, I'm not going to go word by word through that whole sentence, but if we look back at the source, we have this second independent clause which says, older men grab his hand and feel his arm and predict that he could still go out there and hit one. So we have three verbs. Older men grab his hand, feel his arm, and predict. So I said discarded toys, which is my adjective noun, blocked my path and bit into my feet and reminded me of the noise that recently ran through the house. I'm going to also keep the third part of those three verbs the longest, because predict that he could still go out there and hit one becomes reminded me of the noise that recently rang through the house. And then my short independent clause, and the sinking feeling in my heart was devastating, mimicking, and the smile on DiMaggio's face is genuine. Okay, so what I've done is I've created a new sentence. It's actually a sentence that I probably wouldn't write sentences like this. Okay, so I've moved beyond my comfort level in terms of sentence structures, but I've created a new sentence that gets me to practice some of these structures. Okay, so now we're going to go through one other one, and I want you to try this as a class. Remember, your homework tonight is to turn the two sentences that I emailed you into mimic sentences. And you're going to need to make sure you understand the game we're playing here so that you can do it. Okay, so as you work through this next one in a class, do the same 3 steps. Okay, spend a little time talking about how the sentence is put together. Then, clause by clause, or even word by word, provide some substitution. Now, I want the sentence to make sense too. I don't just want it to be grammatically the same. So try to make sure that the sentence is a sentence where when you're finished, it seems like a real sentence. Okay,